On May 30, 1899, Pearl Hart and her companion Joe Boot committed one of the last recorded stagecoach robberies in the United States. Born Pearl Taylor in 1871, she was one of several children brought up in a respectable middle-class family. Her life would take a turn for the worse when, at the age of 17, she fell for a swaggering and seductive gambler named Frederick Hart. Fred was a poor provider, heavy drinker, and often abusive to his young wife. Her life with him proved to be one hardship after another. In 1893, while at the Columbian Exposition in Chicago, Illinois, she became enthralled with the Wild West shows and listened intensely to women's activist speeches. Inspired by seeing strong women and enamored by the heroes and legends of the Wild West, she soon mustered the courage to leave her shiftless husband and boarded a train to Trinidad, Colorado, where she became a popular saloon singer. However, she was pregnant with Frederick's child, so she went home to Canada, gave birth to a son, left him with her mother, and traveled west again, landing in Phoenix, Arizona. However, Frederick caught up with her, begged Pearl to come back to him, and promised to get a real job. The couple reunited. The couple lived wildly, drinking and gambling. Pearl began using harsher drugs, including marijuana and morphine. But Pearl got pregnant, Fred got bored, and after a violent argument between the two, in 1898, Fred knocked Pearl unconscious and left her. So, back to Canada, hear her mom have another kid, and back to Arizona. But in 1899, her brother informed her that their mother was ill and needed money for medical bills. She had hooked up with a miner named Joe Boot and turned to him for advice. He had several ideas for Pearl to make some quick cash. My favorite, Pearl lured men into their room, allowed them to think they're going to get lucky. Joe would knock them out and take their money.
I should come up sometimes, see me.
But this was not lucrative enough, so the couple decided to rob the stagecoach between Florence and Globe, Arizona. On May 30, 1899, they carried out their plan. They stopped the stagecoach, took about $450, and rode off into unfamiliar desert hills. Soon lost, the couple made camp in a grove of trees and fell asleep. When they awoke, they were surrounded by the sheriff and his posse.
Rise and shining, what you want?
Hart's trial took place in Florence in November 1899, and although she admitted her guilt, the jury still acquitted her, most likely because of her story of robbing the stage only to send her mother money. The judge was furious at the verdict, replaced the jury, and had Pearl retried for unlawfully carrying a gun. This time she was convicted and sentenced to 5 years in the Yuma Territorial Prison. Boot was not so lucky, as he received 30 years and was also sent to the Yuma prison. He escaped in 1901 and was never heard of again. On December 19, 1902, after 18 months in prison, Pearl was paroled and moved to Kansas City. As to what happened to Pearl Hart in the end, it remains unknown. Some reports say that she died in Kansas City, where she operated a cigar store in 1925. Others say that she lived in San Francisco, California, when she died in 1952. Most often, however, she is credited with having married a rancher in Dripping Springs, Arizona, where she lived out the last days of her life going by Pearl Bywater and died in 1956.